right after I cut him loose, he was just standing there and walked off. So kind of interesting. We got any duck hunters in here? One, okay. Are you familiar with the Wing Part Survey U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does? So U.S. Fish and Wildlife is part of the waterfowl monitoring to determine populations, population trends, harvest rates, stuff like that. They ask hunters occasionally to send in all the one wing from each duck or goose they harvested during the season. So this is the wing part survey. From that you can get age, sex, and species from all the waterfowl harvested, which gives you a great idea on what it's looking like. Obviously, if you're harvesting a lot of ducks that are older age, so they're previous year birds, they weren't born that year, then you know you didn't have real good recruitment and production with your waterfowl that year, right? So I got the opportunity to help out with that. In this particular one, they call it the Wing Bee. They send a few Fish and Game folks from every state down to California, and we go through 20,000 wings in a week, and sex, age, and species on all of them. So pretty cool deal. So.
How can you tell the difference between male and female?
It's plumage, so just the colors of the feathers. So colors of the feathers, and then you can get age based on feather details. Is it transparent? Is there notched edges on the bottom of the feather? How does it look, overall appearance? So yeah, it's great. So obviously you can't tell if it's like a 5-year-old duck or something like that, but you can tell if they're hatched that year or if they're previous year birds, which is really what we need to know for how is waterfowl production this year. Other fish and wildlife duties, we've had a lot of these recently with CWD popping up in the state, so a lot of CWD check stations. Officers have spent a lot of time on that. It's kind of a huge priority because CWD is the most horrible disease out there. Is everybody familiar with it, or should I explain it a little bit? Want me to explain it? Okay, so CWD is basically a disease that infects deer and elk and other ungulates in the brain. It ends up being misfolded proteins, they call them prions, and it's similar to like the, Jacob Creutzfeldt's disease, that people turn your brain to mush in a year and you die. It's also similar to like mad cow disease, you get that same type of thing. So it's, they call it to use a big word, spongiform encephalopathy, which basically means holes in your brain. But this showed up, it infects deer, it doesn't go away because when the deer dies, these proteins break down and they get in the soil, and another deer that comes along and either licks the soil or licks those proteins or ingests them somehow can get it. They can even get it from eating plants that have ingested those proteins. And it's always fatal, and the big thing is, especially with a heavily infected deer herd, is you don't get any bucks over 2 to 3 years of age in a heavily infected population, and your overall population goes way down. And yeah, you can't find anything bigger than a fork horn or a three point. Yeah.
On that CWD, when you came in the sample, I'm assuming I've been in your neck of the word. I see that the orange fins are up, so I know that means you gotta put it in. I don't hear nothing back from CDC ever, so I'm assuming I'm okay to eat my.
Correct. Yep. So you're right. So if you don't hear anything back in 4 to 6 weeks, you should be good to go.
So 4 to 6 weeks.
Yep. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get a sample tested, and then if it is positive, we will definitely call you and contact you. We'll make sure we contact you if it's positive. So actually, as far as I know, it hasn't jumped to people. They've fed some great apes, some CWD deer parts and stuff like that, and it infected them. And some of the research, so the recommendation from CDC is not to eat it. That's up to you. We're not a health agency. In my opinion, lots of people already eating CWD infected deer across the Midwest, probably. Do you want to be that person that it jumps to? I don't think so, but that's a personal choice. So, yeah, we don't make recommendations. We just refer you to other health agencies. And so, No, actually. So it's actually getting worse a little bit. So it was first found up in the Clearwater region, Slate Creek, Unit 14. And since then, it's moved to a couple of neighboring units around there. We also found it up in Unit 1, up in the Panhandle. We kind of knew that because it was in Montana and it was in British Columbia, and it's just a river valley with thousands of white-tailed deer. So why wouldn't one transfer? And so we detected it there this last year, and it's on our borders with Utah and Wyoming as well. But it's horrible because the only way to kind of slow the spread is to reduce deer numbers. So we've been doing deer culls and things like that in the area to try to spread or slow the spread of the disease. The other one that people get confused with is EHD, which is epizootic hemorrhaging disease. That one is just a disease that kind of comes and goes with deer, and it depends. If it's a low water year, it's the disease is spread by gnats that bite and spread it from infected animal to infected animal. It just kind of comes and goes. That one's kind of nationwide, and you have an outbreak every 10 or 15 years, but there's no other long-term effects from that one. So CWD is the one that's scary because once it's there, it's almost impossible to eradicate. And then you also have the concerns about eating an infected deer. So,
Sir, forgive me for my selective hearing. I thought you said CBD.
no,
Sorry
not CBD.
about that.
It's all good. Yes,
Sorry.
they are. Doesn't seem like there's affected
Well,
at the
you're
same rate.
CBD. I thought
So there's been,
Is it in there
like
somewhere?
it first showed up in Colorado,
weed
and
oil.
it's also been in
Yeah, you can
Wyoming since about the 1960s or 70s. Some of those areas still have decent numbers of elk, but they've seen, almost all their deer disappear.
Now I see
Or
it.
the ones that are left are infected.
can't see
within
very
just
well.
a year or two of age, so you get maybe a 2-year-old deer. That's
I
the
might
oldest
be
deer's gonna
tired.
be in the area.
From last night.
Yeah, I'm not tired.
Well, it came from a government detected in a government research facility in Colorado. So there's your conspiracy theory. But they were doing Scrapey's research on sheep, so did some, yeah, maybe, right? So it's like the COVID stuff. Where did COVID come from? A lab. CWD came from a lab. Yeah, it's horrible. A long time. So they have removed animals from a pen, and 10 years later, they put clean animals in there and they pick it up. So within a year or two, they pick it up again. So if it's hot enough, it can reduce it and kill it, but it's got to be super hot.
Yeah, I'm a
So it
goofball.
basically
You
has to
too.
cook everything. You gotta nuke it. Yep. Okay.
There's no chance of that going away.
I would like to say there is, but short of killing every single deer in Unit 14 and the other infected areas, which is almost impossible. Plus, it's socially completely unpopular. It's unpopular to reduce the deer herd there, but that's about the only thing you can do to kind of slow it, at this point. And it sucks. I hate it. I'm a deer hunter. I'm an elk hunter, and it makes me sick too.
What's the average percentage? How big is the deer?
So in 14, we've got a really low infection rate, like less than 2%. Yeah.
So others that it hasn't showed up yet.
It hasn't shown up yet, so likely nothing there. So yeah, both. Yeah, it's both. Yep. So it can affect whitetail, mule deer, elk, and potentially moose too. We haven't found any moose, but we're sampling moose for it as well. Yeah. That's a little bear cub. He's on the bear cub there. So, and next to the pickup truck, it's a bear cub. So just, picked up that orphan bear cub and, relocating it or, that's Smokey. That's Boo Boo. We call those
Yogi.
suitcase bears because you can fit them in your suitcase. So that's a suitcase.
Yogi and Boo
When I see
Boo.
somebody harvest one like that in the fall, I'm like, oh, you got a nice suitcase bear in there. You know what I'm talking about. So.
Yogi and Boo Boo.
So this is just other stuff we do. We do Idaho Conservation Officers Association does a youth camp every year in Cascade. I don't know if you're folks are familiar with it. So if you got kids from age 10 to 12, that's the camp, and it's every year usually somewhere around the first week of August. You know, we do hunter ed, we do youth hunts, we do all kinds of other stuff. We go to fairs, we talk to folks. You know, the whole idea is to develop relationships with the folks in your community, because all the big cases, you know, most of these big cases, you know, any of them I've talked about or whatever that we get, it's because of folks calling us. It's not, sure, we find a few here and there on our own, but 98% of the big cases comes from one of you calling an officer and saying, hey, I saw something and it was wrong, or I know about this going on and it's wrong. So, you know, really appreciate that. So a lot of our stuff, you know, like the kids, you try to get to them before they get older, before they go down the path. It's amazing when you have kids in hunter ed and they're like, yeah, my dad does this and that and the other thing. And it's like, hopefully you can make a positive impact, right? My dad used my tag last year, you know? Okay. But this is just some more of the stuff we do, you know, youth hunts. Like I was saying, we've done a youth pheasant hunt up in the Clearwater for our best hunter ed students in partnership with the Flying Bee Ranch. That's a really popular one. I'm a trapper, try to take kids out trapping and get them out there enjoying that.
You trap wolves?
I do trap wolves. I've gotten a few.
Oh, I like wild wolves.
I like wolves, but they certainly need to be managed. And they can be managed quite aggressively from what we found out. So, let's see. Some of the stuff I talked about, kind of interesting thing, you know, talking about technology. You know, technology is huge, how it's changing, how it's impacting hunters, you know. You talk thermals, you talk long range shooting, you talk about all this other stuff, right? That's out there, and it is making changes, you know, and it will affect at some point our season length and structure and all the rest of that. We have a technology working group meeting going on right now that's kind of looking at some of this. You know, the thermal stuff has gotten just through the roof nowadays. People are using thermals. They can find their deer at night and then just sit on them until daylight and then shoot them right at daylight. There's no more showing up in the morning and hoping you see a deer at daylight. It's like, you know, he's there, so you got him. You know, some of the just public expectations, you know, cell phones. When I go in the backcountry and I'm gone for a couple of days working, you know, we try to set expectations, but I still get complaints every year. I called an officer and he didn't get back to me for 3 days. I had a guy last year complaining about another officer, said I called him and he didn't get back to me for, you know, 4 days, and I shot this bear in my yard and it rotted and went bad. And I was like, well, did you ever think about where he was? He's like, no, I just called him and left a message. He's supposed to get back to me. I was like, he was on a patrol in the backcountry for 5 days and gone the whole time. So, you know, some of it's managing expectations, but the public expectation is we get back quickly. I guess my point on that would be is if you call one officer and you don't get somebody that answers, call somebody else or call our Citizens Against Poaching hotline. It'll get to somebody that can handle the call quickly, you know, rather than being frustrated with your local officer because I know him and he didn't get back to me. Okay, sorry. Let's see. Law enforcement is changing. Yes, we all know that, right? Through all the past years, there's a lot more expectations on what we can do, a lot more expectations on what we, you know, shall not do, a lot more scrutiny, which some of that is good. It's well deserved. Politics, yeah, politics is huge. Happy to be working in the state of Idaho because, you know, it seems like the general public still supports law enforcement in the state of Idaho. Just had a meeting with some Oregon and Washington game wardens here, and their public does not support them at all over there. It just does not. It's very hard to do your job if the public doesn't support you.
That's right.
Let's see here. Kind of brought this up earlier, but just the number of employees in the department stayed the same for a long time. This was an old chart I had. You know, out of total employees in the department, I think it was like in 2015 we had 558 full-time employees. I think currently we have 553, so actually a few less full-time employees. The number of enforcement folks is right around 110, 114, depending on how we're staffed. We've got, 7 regions, so you have 7 regional conservation officers, 15 district conservation officers like myself, and then you got all your field officers, which are senior conservation officers. And then and then we have investigators in each region as well. I'm gonna keep going here. Okay, so if you want to be a game warden, what's it take?
Money.
Yeah, money. You gotta go to college, 4-year bachelor's degree. You get a bachelor degree in natural resources or something close to it, but you have to have a minimum of 4 upper level fish and wildlife courses, so 300 level courses. You gotta pass the post fitness standards, and you gotta do that twice a year for your whole career. So unlike other agencies that don't have fitness standards, Fish and Game does, and if you don't pass them, we take your gun. So you don't go out and do any more enforcement work. I'd say it's a long process. I think the last time I looked at the whole process, 15 some steps to getting hired. And then once you get hired and you get picked, we do a mini academy, you have your police academy you have to pass. We have a field training course you gotta pass. And then you're on probation for a year where we can hire or fire you if we don't like you. So. Let's see, and then, continued education, we have a lot of our yearly quals and things like that. Firearms, use of force, fitness, and then a certain amount of just training hours required to get from post. Could be any of those disciplines or something else. Could be investigative techniques, could be interview, techniques, things like that. All right, so this is just kind of my plug, being a good witness. I already mentioned it earlier, but our best cases are made from people calling us. So if you are out there and you see a violation, these are just a few things you might want to take a look at or write down. I mean, huge is you can get it, license plate number. I mean, that's number one. Vehicle descriptions sometimes aren't great. And if you got a license plate number, we pretty much got them on that one. Vehicle description is good, suspects, where they're at, what they're doing, all that stuff. We have a Citizens Against Poaching hotline. It's up there, 800-632-5999. That's your best number to call. They will get a hold of a Fish and Game officer any time of the day. So we get these calls. Okay, questions?
I heard that the commission was looking at maybe pulling any dial type scopes, being used in big game, dial type scopes, dope, or any type of rangefinder.
So we have, so there's a technology committee right now working through that, and they're gonna make recommendations to the commission. As far as I know, they haven't made those recommendations yet. And once they make those, it's up to the commission to decide whether or not that's gonna happen. I haven't heard any